Under the blinding midday sun, a cold wind swept across the base parade ground. Soldiers stood in perfect formation, boots buried in dust, faces still as statues. But among them stood one woman, her uniform neat, her gaze steady, her jaw locked in defiance. Her name was Private Elara Hayes, a quiet soldier whose silence seemed to irritate those who thrived on dominance. Asterisk, asterisk. What city are you watching from today? If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe for more real stories about extraordinary people. Asterisk that day, General Marcus Thorne, an iron-willed leader feared by even the most battle-hardened officers, was in no mood for restraint. Rumors had reached him about insubordination in his ranks, about a woman who refused to speak up, refused to salute him properly, and carried herself with the confidence of someone far above her station. He saw her and pointed her out. "You, step forward." Elara obeyed without hesitation, her movements crisp, her eyes never breaking from his. The entire base turned silent. Thorne stared at her for a long moment, studying her. "You think you can stand here and ignore the chain of command? You think silence makes you special?" No answer. Her silence felt heavier than words. The general's fury tightened. "Maybe if we strip away what makes you proud, you'll learn respect." He called for scissors. And before anyone could protest, he grabbed a handful of her thick black hair and cut it off, the blade slicing through the strands in rough, uneven strokes. The soldiers flinched, watching in disbelief as locks of her hair fell to the ground. But Elara didn't move. Not a tremor. Not a single tear. She simply stood, eyes locked forward, the wind carrying away the strands like fallen feathers. When it was over, Thorne threw the scissors aside and barked, "Now maybe you'll remember your place, Private." And she answered finally in a calm, even tone, "Yes, sir." That was all. Nothing more. But that calmness, unnatural, unbroken, unnerved him. He expected anger, humiliation, maybe tears. But instead, all he saw was control. Absolute, deliberate control. Later that night, Thorne sat in his office, trying to shake the unease. The incident replayed in his mind, the way she didn't flinch, the strange precision in her voice. He tried to brush it off as defiance. But something about her eyes haunted him. He opened her file. Name, Elara Hayes. Age, 29. Rank, private. Recent transfer. Origin, classified. Classified? He murmured. That was strange. No private had a classified origin. He called in his assistant. "Get me everything on this soldier. Hayes. Now." Hours later, he received a sealed report, marked with red ink. Access restricted. Level Omega. Only top-tier clearance could unseal it. He was one of the few who had that access. He hesitated for a moment, then opened it. The screen flickered. Then the first line appeared. Former operative, Naval Special Warfare Command, SEAL Team 6. His breath caught. He scrolled down, eyes widening with every line. Mission count, 37 successful black operations. Status, declared KIA 3 years ago. Decorations, Medal of Honor, posthumous, Silver Star, Navy Cross. Alias, Commander Elara H. Vale. Commander, not private. The woman he had publicly humiliated, whose hair he had cut as punishment, was once a decorated Navy SEAL commander, presumed dead after a classified rescue mission that saved an entire platoon. He leaned back in shock. His pulse thundered. The woman who stood silently on his parade ground wasn't disobedient. She was grieving. Broken, maybe. Or worse, hiding something. He remembered her silence. That was not arrogance. That was discipline. The next morning, Thorne called for her. She entered his office with her cropped hair barely reaching her collar, face emotionless, stance perfect. He looked at her for a long time, unsure how to begin. "I owe you an explanation," he started. "No, sir," she said. "You don't owe me anything." Her voice was calm, almost forgiving. But there was something behind it, a depth he couldn't read. "Why are you here?" he asked finally. "Why hide who you are?" Alara hesitated, then said softly, "Because heroes don't always survive, sir. Sometimes they just start over." She told him fragments of the mission gone wrong, the explosion that left her team presumed dead, and her decision to vanish. She buried the commander and returned as a nameless soldier. "No rank, no medals, no noise," she said. "Just a uniform and silence." Thorn felt his throat tighten. "You did what you had to," she interrupted. "Punishment reminds us who we are." Her words hit harder than any reprimand could have. Over the following weeks, Thorn watched her differently. During training, she moved with lethal precision, every motion deliberate, efficient. She never bragged, never hesitated. When others stumbled, she picked them up. When one soldier panicked during a drill, she calmly disarmed him and took his position, saving the entire exercise. Rumors began spreading again, this time of awe. The woman who endured the general's humiliation now led by quiet example. One evening during a storm, an emergency drill went wrong. The ammo depot caught fire. Panic spread through the base as explosions rocked the compound. Thorn ordered evacuation, but before anyone could move, Alara ran straight into the flames. "Hayes!" he shouted. But she was gone into the smoke. Minutes felt like hours. Then, through the choking haze, a figure emerged carrying 2 injured soldiers over her shoulders. Her uniform was scorched, her face blackened with soot, but her eyes burned with focus. She laid them down, saluted, and collapsed. Later, in the infirmary, Thorn stood beside her bed. She was awake, weak but smiling faintly. "You saved them," he said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "No soldier left behind, sir. You taught that." He shook his head slowly. "No, Commander Vale, you taught me." For the first time, she smiled. Weeks later, the military quietly restored her real identity. Not through press releases or medals, but through silent respect. When she walked across the base, every soldier stood taller. Thorn, the man who had shamed her, now saluted her first. He asked her one last question before she left for reassignment. "Why didn't you stop me that day?" Alara looked out across the horizon, where dawn painted the sky gold. "Because real strength," she said softly, "isn't in stopping cruelty, it's in surviving it with grace." She walked away, her cropped hair glinting in the light, every step a reminder that discipline and humility were stronger than any punishment. Years later, her name resurfaced in whispers, missions completed in silence, nations saved without headlines. The legend of Commander Vale grew in the shadows, told only by those who had seen her walk through fire and never lose her calm. And somewhere in his office, General Thorn kept the scissors he'd once used to humiliate her mounted in a frame, beneath a plaque that read, "Respect is not demanded. It is earned." He often looked at it when pride threatened to blind him. He had punished a woman he thought was beneath him. Instead, he met the greatest soldier he had ever known. Her silence had been her armor, her humility, her strength, her scars, her medals unseen. And though the world might never know her name again, Thorn would never forget the lesson she left behind. What did this story make you feel? Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more real stories that heal the heart.